Hamilton County Coroner is discussing the death of 18-year-old Ryan Hinton. Hinton was killed by Cincinnati police earlier this month. WCPO 9 News reporter Andrew Rowan shares what his preliminary autopsy reveals.
At her office, the coroner said Ryan Hinton had 3 gunshot wounds, one in and out of the left forearm, another, which may have been from the same bullet, but it's possible it was a separate one, started in on the side chest, went through the heart and came out of the chest near the sternum. That was the lethal shot. And then there was one more gunshot wound.
And it was in the right posterolateral chest, adjacent to the shoulder, and it was soft tissue only. It traveled beneath the skin and ended just beneath the skull, and we were able to retrieve that bullet.
So you're saying he was shot in the back?
No, I said he was shot in the right posterolateral near the shoulder.
Dr. Lakshmi Samarko would not discuss how that gunshot ended at the base of his skull.
You're going to have to talk to somebody about that because, again, I can't comment on the body cam footage or what position his body was in at the time.
Community tensions have risen after an officer shot and killed the 18-year-old earlier this month. Police say Hinton pointed a gun at the officer.
His manner of death is homicide.
On Thursday, the coroner received a grand jury subpoena. Samarko says it is the first time it's happened in the county in 40 years. But still, she released preliminary autopsy results.
We wanted to present you with the actual facts and not have conjecture out there.
Do you worry it could taint a grand jury?
What I'm presenting?
Yeah, more facts.
Any more than anything else that's already been out in the press? I mean, these are just facts. They're going to get the facts anyway.
The coroner wouldn't answer my question about when she is going to go in front of the grand jury. If the prosecutor does bring the case to that point, Tanya, those jurors would be responsible for deciding if the officer will face any charges.
All right, Andrew, I understand we are hearing from the Hinton family tonight about this.
Yeah, an attorney for their family is saying they are waiting for their own independent autopsy results to come back. That is in addition to multiple investigations by law enforcement into the shooting. But the family is also saying they are disappointed to see elected officials, in their words, joust to be the first to get information about the shooting to the public. It's an apparent jab at the multiple press conferences that have been held since the shooting. Tanya?
All right, peace and blessings, all praises to the Most High. Psalms 37:14 says, the wicked draw their swords and bend their bows to strike down the poor and the needy, but their swords will pierce their own hearts and their bows will break. And in the case of Ryan Hinton, who was struck down by the wicked cops, this coroner's report revealed what many people have suspected, that Ryan Hinton was shot in the back. And from what I'm gathering from what she's saying is that he was shot by another officer, as you heard the reporter say. Are you saying he was shot in the back? No, he was shot in the right postal lateral, which means right here. But we're going to break down her entire press conference to see how she is being very evasive when she's talking about that shot, but she's very particular and exact when she's talking about the shot that came from the left side where the officer was. Now, I'm also going to show you the body cam footage so we can review how it is completely impossible for the officer to shoot him from this side and also from that side. And also we're going to talk about how the grand jury subpoenaed her, because the press conference was supposed to be held Friday, but the grand jury subpoenaed her. And I think in an attempt to make sure that she says what they want her to say and don't say what they don't want her to say. Check out how evasive this coroner is while talking about that shot that came from the right post lateral, as she says, which means anytime you're talking about post, you mean past, rear. There's no way he can be shot from the left side and the right side by the same officer. So just check this press conference out. We're going to break it down piece by piece.
Well, ready? All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming at such short notice, and I know it was rather short notice. So first, I want to address having to cancel the press conference on Friday. As you know, we were served with grand jury subpoena. And in my 13 years as coroner, I've never been served with a grand jury subpoena. And I looked into it, and I believe, at least in the history of Hamilton County in the last 40 years, that hasn't happened to any of the coroners. So this was new territory. We had to learn some things. We had to consult some people. We had to ask a lot of questions. And so I decided putting off the press conference until we got some answers was the better way to handle things. So thank you for coming for the delayed press conference, shall we say, postponed. In the interim, I understand that some of the autopsy findings have been relayed to the public. And I just thought that the public should hear that from us, from our office directly, so that they get the facts straight and so that the information is correct. I want to start off with saying, first of all, our condolences to the grieving families, because this is not easy for anybody. And no matter what our victims in this, and they're not just the people that have passed away. It's really the family members who are left to deal with their grief. So in the interest of hopefully easing some of the pain and also to be able to provide the media, and you have sent me many written requests asking for the preliminary autopsy findings. And we've always worked well together and the truth to the public. So I'm counting on you to do that here. And so I thought I will give you a copy of this when I'm done with the press conference. But I wanted to at least give you the preliminary autopsy findings.
All right. So before she says that, now she said that she has never seen where a grand jury subpoenaed a coroner. And once again, I think that they tried to subpoena her to make sure that she says what they want her to say and make sure she doesn't say what they don't want her to say. But I do commend her because she did something that I have not yet seen anyone do in a press conference, and that is offer condolences to Mr. Hinton's family. Not the DA, not the police, not the sheriff, not the news media. No one else has offered condolences to the family. So she did receive my respect for that. But as you'll see during this interview, she's going to be very vague about certain questions that is asked about that particular right shot that was asked about by the reporter in the first clip. And you're going to hear him ask that same thing here. And she's going to be very evasive when answering how that could have happened.
And Mr. Hinton had 3 gunshot wounds to his body. And this is in no particular order, but there was one in the left forearm, and there was an entrance wound and an exit wound, and it was soft tissue injury only. Did not contact any bone, and just skin wounds, entrance and exit. There was a second gunshot wound in the left lateral chest, so underneath the axilla, meaning the armpit, and that one did traverse the chest, and it did traverse through the left ventricle, and it exited the chest near the sternum. We believe that is the lethal wound. There was a third, basically just beneath the skin wound, and it was in the right posterolateral chest, adjacent to the shoulder, and it was soft tissue only. It traveled beneath the skin and ended just beneath the skull, and we were able to retrieve that bullet. So Mr. Hinton's cause of death is a gunshot wound to the torso, largely a lethal wound. And his manner of death is homicide. So I wanted to make sure you got the exact facts from us and relayed that to the public. And again, there are no there are no words to express our grief and our sorrow to the family members. And we hope that this provides some solace to know the actual facts.
You ready to take questions?
I'm ready to take questions, but they're going to be limited to our portion of the investigation.
So can you talk about that, the bullet wound that killed him? Did that go through his arm and then enter his chest? Is that one bullet?
There is a possibility that that could have been the same bullet, because when you're running, usually you've got a position and you're running back and forth like this. So it's possible that the same bullet traversed the left forearm and into the left side of the chest.
If the bullet that killed him went in his side and out his sternum, which is his chest, does that mean he was shot from slightly behind?
No, it was straight from the side. This is mid-lateral side. And if you're asking why did it go toward the front, it did contact a rib on the way. So, as you know, when projectiles, and you can talk to somebody who's a physics expert or a firearms expert, when they hit something solid, they tend to deflect.
And did you recover that bullet, or was it the other? That was the one. You did not.
Yeah, no, there were.
All right, so you see how exact that she's talking about this shot. Now, the reporter asked a great question. How did it go in his side and come out of his chest? Does that mean he was shot at a slightly rearward angle, right? And then she said, well, no, it hit a rib and it went under his oscilla, which means armpit. Now, that's going to be very important, how she's distinguishing the medical terms from the layman's terms in this description. But watch when she gets to the post-lateral chest and they're going to ask her, hey, does this mean he was shot in the back? No, he was shot in the post-lateral such and such and such, which means, okay, well, why you can't make that a layman's terms like you just did the armpit and the oscilla? But let's continue.
Pieces of that bullet that we recovered, but not the entire bullet, no.
And he basically bled to death then what happened.
We didn't have a scene response. We only responded to the hospital, so I'm not sure what happened at the scene. So
The third able to retrieve from the right posterolateral chest. Are you saying he was
it
shot?
was recovered from the neck, just below the skull.
So you're saying he was shot in the back?
No, I said he was shot in the right posterolateral near the shoulder.
Almost that.
Now, you see what she did there, right? The first one, she said, well, it went into his oscilla, which is the armpit, right? But when he asked her, okay, are you saying he was shot in the back? And she said, no, he was shot in the right postal lateral. And what that means is right here. And so why couldn't she just say, well, no, he was shot in the rear shoulder instead of using that medical term? And she's going to keep being evasive when asked for clarification on this.
Angle that you see in that body cam.
I cannot comment on the body cam. First of all, there was so much motion, and I am not a body cam expert. I get a little motion sick anyway, so that's not.
Well, that reporter is asked, okay, well, look, how could that handle happen from the angle of the body cam? Now, she's saying, well, I can't comment on the body cam. I don't understand that. And that, I think, is part of that subpoena that she received saying, look, you better not say this and you better not say that. Play stupid, play dumb, because we know what everybody saw is not going to match what we're trying to say happened.
My cup of tea. So you're going to have to ask somebody about the body cam footage. Yeah.
So can you then talk about where that bullet entered that body in plain speak and where it exited?
It entered the side of the chest and impacted the left 7th rib.
Now, you see how exact when that officer, look, I mean, that reporter says, look, tell us in plain speak, where did that bullet enter? It said it entered the left side of the chest, in the sternum, and hit a 7th rib. You know, she's using very understandable terms when she's describing the quote unquote kill shot.
And then it traveled through the left side of the chest, through the left ventricle, and then out the front.
And then the other bullet, how would that bullet have, in plain speak, entered in it?
It entered, plain speaking, I mean, I'm a physician. This is right posterolateral chest, is, you know, near the shoulder, and then traveled up underneath the skin, and then ended at the base of the skull without impacting bone or anything along the way. It was all soft tissue beneath the.
Now, she did say, okay, well, I'm a physician. It's right posterolateral, near the shoulder, and she actually pointed where it was. But she could have just said in the back right here. You know, so she tried to be evasive, but she couldn't avoid it because the guy said in plain speak, tell us in plain speak, just like he told us a while ago, stop saying the post-lateral, just say in the back of the shoulder. But she continued to be evasive throughout this clarification process.
Skin.
That would have had to be then as he was going down.
You're going to have to talk to somebody about that because, again, I can't comment on the body cam footage or what position his body was in at the time.
Now the guy asked her, okay, well, how could that happen? That had to be happen when he was going down, unless he was shot by somebody else. And then she goes into her, you know, I don't know nothing attitude. Whether you got to ask them about the body cam footage. We're not talking about the camera footage. We're talking about how could that bullet enter into that side of his body when the officer is shooting from the left side of his body. They said the bullet entered to the right shoulder and traveled up to his spine. Now, that officer who we saw shooting could have not.
And I can't also tell you which gunshot wound preceded which. I don't know the order. I can just tell you the gunshot wounds there are 3 entrance wounds and 2 exit wounds.
But it's possible that there were only two bullets that hit.
It's possible.
What, from a legal perspective, what allows you to talk today that didn't allow you on Friday?
I didn't know that I wasn't allowed on Friday, but I didn't have enough information. And that's why I had to postpone the press conference until I gathered some more information about what my requirements were with respect to the grand jury subpoena. And that's why I took the time to get the information before I proceeded with the press conference.
What does that mean that you got this subpoena?
I don't know what that means. I mean, it's a grand jury subpoena asking for materials. And, you know, like I said, I've never had one before in the office. So that's why I need to find out what that meant.
It didn't stop you from relaying any of this information.
Now she's saying again, okay, well, why? I didn't know what they wanted, but they wanted some information. And, you know, I didn't know, you know, why did they call me there? So I decided to delay the press conference. We know why they called you there, to make sure that you didn't say he was shot in the back, in the upper part of his back. Just keep using medical terminology and think we're stupid and that our lying eyes didn't tell us the truth.
Not today, but I didn't know what that meant when I received it. So I felt compelled to postpone it until I got some more information, and then made a decision then to go ahead and move forward with the press conference.
Does the reason why you wanted to hold this press conference, obviously you said it was to ease the pain of the grieving families. Does it also perhaps ease community tensions?
Well, that is my hope. And I think in my 13 years of being in the office, being transparent with the public and the media with what we find and what we have found has been something that we routinely do. And that's part of what I've done in the office is I want to be transparent because I think you have a right to know. And I think the family has a right to know. And so we wanted to present you with the actual facts and not have conjecture out there with somebody saying this and somebody saying this, and and it's all confusing, and then the tensions are going up. So let me provide you with the actual facts, and that's what we are doing here. The other thing is that the family and the prosecutor's office have both been provided with what I'm going to be providing you. The family has also obtained their own private autopsy, so they have findings. They already know their findings. I'm sure that's been shared with them. So this is what we found in our office.
What day do you report to the grand jury?
I don't think I'm allowed to discuss that.
Of course not.
Can you kind of just, like Dave, can you kind of point to where it is on the body?
You know what? I didn't do the autopsy, so I'm looking at the report, and
Is that going to be all you give us, like the exact spot where it is?
No, we don't do diagrams or anything like that. I mean, that will be provided,
'Cause
I'm
when you
sure.
say, I'm not thinking like this area, and then the other one is like here or here. I'm a little confused on exactly where.
This is what I got from our pathologist. So.
When did you finish the autopsy?
See, there the guy asked the question. Look, okay, well, I'm still not understanding where on the exact body did it happen? Like deer or deer, you know what I'm saying? And the other one was here, or I didn't do it, I didn't see it. We don't do diagrams, but from your professional abilities, you can say, okay, well, yeah, the bullet entered here. But you've been told, just like you said, well, I can't discuss that, what the grand jury, subpoenaed me for. You've been told what not to and what to say, because you were very clear on the left side of it. It entered, like she even pointed, it entered here under the forearm. But then when we were talking about this, the mysterious shot that came from the right, I'm totally oblivious to where that is and how that is, and how to put it in layman's terms. It's I'm a physician, so it's the right post lateral. Just say in the back, right by the shoulder.
And what was that communication with the police department? With them saying it was through the chest, kind of where was the communication there, and what is going to be done moving forward so this doesn't happen again?
Well, this is why I ask that we provide the autopsy findings from our office, so that you get the facts. And how that was communicated to the police, I don't know. I'm not even sure if they were present at the autopsy. Actually, I haven't looked into it. The autopsy was performed the next day.
It's possible, obviously, that the police were just relaying what they observed as opposed to autopsy.
It's possible. And I don't know, like I said, they might have been present for the autopsy. I'm not sure. But we also don't, even though you all request it, we don't give you autopsy findings the day that we do them, because there's a fair amount of looking at all the information, looking at scene photos, if there are any, looking at the other evidence that we're provided with before we you with something that we then have to retract later.
Prosecutor Pillage said that she, after you canceled the last press conference, Prosecutor Pillage said that she wanted all of the information gathered, and she wanted to put that out with your autopsy results all at one time. Obviously, this subverts that. It precludes that from happening. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, number one, since you're all familiar with Ohio Revised Code 313.10D, which governs how we provide information to the media when the media provides us with written requests. Up until recently, that stated the coroner shall provide preliminary autopsy findings, photos, et cetera, for you to view in a timely manner. And we have always done that in the past. And in this particular case, the language now has changed to may, but
She's telling you right now, they're doing something different in this case as far as what the coroners can provide. She said, we've always done this. Now it's saying that, it says shall. Shall means you have to. May means, well, you can if you want to. And this, you can tell by the look in her eyes, looking at, she's trying to think hard and long about how to put this. So I won't be liable for, what they're trying to do to the people as far as withhold or skew information like they've been doing so far.
we thought it was important for you to have it since you've all provided me with so many written requests for access to that. And we have always been transparent with the public in our findings. We're a scientific organization as well as a healthcare organization. And I think the public expects nothing less from us. And that's what we try and do. But we also don't want to provide it so quickly that we haven't had a chance to look at all of the evidence that we have. So our portion of the investigation, this is what we've concluded. Yes, there's still preliminary autopsy findings because there's still a few more things that need to be done, like looking at microscope slides and, confirming all the laboratory tests. But
To get the toxicology back.
yes,
And did that show anything in the system?
yes, it did. But does that really affect what happened with?
Well, I was just wondering.
There they go again. Now they're asking about the toxicology report and was anything in his system. And she answered, she was like, well, yes, but what does that have to do with, she wanted to say, well, what does that have to do with him being shot in the back? Really? That's what she wanted to say. That's the look on her face like, but there they go with the, once again, the demonization of the victim. He had some weed in the system, so he was going to automatically turn into the high superpowered super Negro, and the officer feared for his life. That has no bearing on what happened on this day, and no explanation, once again, on how that shot came from the right side, entered his right back, and ended up at the base of his skull.
Are you able to tell us what that was?
I would prefer to wait until we get the rest of the tests back. We're still waiting on a couple of things, so we have some preliminary tests. But again, this is one of those cases where I don't want to precipitously give you information that I may have to back up on and relook at things. So some of those tests take a little while. And it's only been 2 weeks, so.
So from the reports that you have, I just want to confirm, he was shot in the side.
Yes.
And so it was the fatal wound was one that came through the armpit, exited the sternum, so it was not shot in the chest or the back, it was all side.
Just below the armpit. So that is still considered chest. It's just the side of the chest. Yeah.
See how direct that she's been with this? Just below the armpit. She didn't give the medical term for the armpit. She's not giving the medical term for the chest, the medical term for the rib. She's being very direct and exact in that explanation of the quote unquote kill shot.
And then the other one, I'm a little still confused on the second one that hit him in the shoulder. Where did that injure?
I said
See?
upper posterior lateral chest.
See how direct she was with the first one? And he said, well, what about the one that hit him in the shoulder? I said the post-lateral chest, that is the back. You know what I'm saying? So why can't you speak in layman's terms on one aspect, but with this one that's unexplainable, came through his back shoulder and ended up in the skull, you have to use all the medical terminology that you learned in medical school. That's where you lose my respect right here, Lamsky Skarko, or whatever, however you say your name.
I know you're going to have to go look it up.
Yeah, exactly where that is.
Now she's saying he got to go look it up. But you didn't make him go look up the oscula, which is the armpit. This is what I'm telling you about what they do. They're trying to hide it in plain sight and double word speak.
Go look it up. I'm going to keep it, yeah, posterolateral adjacent to the shoulder.
Posterolateral adjacent to the shoulder. But you just said armpit, sternum, and chest. We all know what those things are. So why can't you use the same terminology right there? And look at the dumb look on her face right here. I hate to be like that, but that's, you know what I'm saying? I see what you're doing. I don't know if anybody else cannot see it, but we see you, ma'am. We hear you. So you can play this game all you want with somebody else.
And that was not the lethal wound. That was simple.
How do we know? It ended up at the base of his skull. And we don't even trust you now.
Under the skin and traveled literally under the skin. And it was recovered at the base of the skull, but before it entered.
Back to Connie Pillich's initial reaction to the press conference that had been called and then canceled. Are you afraid that having this press conference is going to in any way hamper prosecutors' efforts?
I am here simply presenting facts, and what I think this goes back to what we talked about just 2 weeks ago, the absolute need to have an independently elected coroner so that the public gets that information from us. I mean, I think over the last several days, all of these issues that have happened come up point out even more the importance of having an independently elected coroner. And, you know, so if the public is watching this, you know, please reach out to your Ohio senators to support Senator Blessing's amendment that he's introducing, removing the language of eliminating elected coroners, instead having them appointed by the commissioners. This is why you need to have us elected. This is why you need to have us elected, so that you're hearing directly from us and you're getting the factual information.
Do you worry it could taint a grand jury?
I'm sorry?
Do you worry it could taint a grand jury?
With what I'm presenting?
Yeah.
Any more than anything else that's already been out in the press? I mean, these are just facts. They're going to get the facts anyway.
They're going to be presented this.
Absolutely.
Probably even more, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. They'll get the facts. Yeah, they'll get our evidence and incomplete. So, yeah.
I'm not sure if you report would be able to identify this, but based on, would you be able to see if he was holding an object or a gun, or based on the indentations in the hands or anything like that?
No, I mean, where guns are concerned, of course, we're going to check for gunshot residue on hands. But that, you know, the public watches so many forensic shows, and I know everybody thinks if there's gunshot residue present, that means that they pulled the trigger. Well, it doesn't. It just means that they might have been in the vicinity of somebody that pulled the trigger. They might have been, you know, even the same room, and it might have floated around. They might get a little gunshot residue. But yeah, it could indicate that somebody pulled the trigger too. We always check the hands, but that's if somebody pulled the trigger. But also, you know, if you're shot and there's gunshot residue, there could be gunshot residue from that. So that's not exactly going to be accurate as far as looking at that information.
Was the pathway of the gunshots consistent with him being in a certain position, whether it was him holding a gun in a related position as police or prosecutors have said? Is there anything that
We can't comment on that. I mean, it passed through his left forearm, so and the left side of his chest.
All right, so you hear that? The lady's asking, okay, is there any way to determine the position of his body, or whether he's holding the gun and you know, what the way the bullets enter? And this lady just literally said, well, it passed through his left forearm and the left side of his chest. Those are very plain layman's terms. But when she asked about the bullet who came from the back of his shoulder and ended up in his neck on the other side of his body, all of a sudden she don't know how to put that in layman's terms. So this lady right here is definitely a part of the problem.
So that would be where the bullet entered, and then it exited, you know, it deflected off the 7th rib through, and then it exited near the sternum. So
You said that
What additional information are we going to get from a final autopsy report?
the laboratory tests, the toxicology reports, and anything else that we might find as far as, you know, medical issues that he's had, you know, have detailed analysis of the organs, just to make sure that there aren't any other medical issues that he might have had that we would, of course, relay to the family, that, you know, if there's something there that looked like it was genetic, and that we would share that information with the family so that, you know, they can have other people checked in the family. It's part of a routine autopsy to make sure that we're covering all the information that we can get.
you said that you were not called to the scene but responded to the hospital. Is there any reason for that? Can that happen? Is that typical?
No, he was transported to the hospital in an attempt to save his life. So, and then he was pronounced there. So that's why we responded there. If that didn't happen and he was pronounced at the scene, we would have responded to the scene. So
It was that bullet when it clips that ventricle, that was probably the part of it that made this fatal shot.
correct.
I mean, that's the part that did the most damage that would have been.
Yes, that's the lethal wound. All right, I think we've exhausted all the details here. So if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to leave it.
All right, so that is the press conference by the coroner. And you can see, as I pointed out, that she was very exact and direct about the shot, the quote unquote kill shot that actually went to our brother's heart, allegedly. But, you know, when it comes to the shot that came from the right side of his body and ended up in his neck, she doesn't know how that happened. She can't explain, you know, how the body was. She can't even point it out on a diagram, which leads me to believe that when she was called to that subpoena, when she got subpoenaed, they probably told her, listen, you better not say everything that you found. And so we got to look back at the video footage. The video footage with our dear brother running and being shot from the left side. And even on the back, in the back, basically, as he's running with his back towards the officer's still shooting. But there's still no way, even from that angle, that the bullet could hit him in the shoulder and travel up to his base of his skull from a rightward angle. So let's look at that and y'all tell me.
On your right. He's got a gun. Go. Down. Go.
The individual is running with a.
And so we're not going to listen to her lying self. But you can see from that video that if he was shot from that angle, there's no way a bullet could have entered right here and ended up at the base of his skull. Unless, you know, he was shot. The officer was standing over him and shooting from the right side. Like when she's talking about the left posterolateral, this is where she's talking about. And so from just having a brain, I would say that he was either shot before he ran through those trash cans by another officer, or another officer was shooting him from the other angle. There's no way to explain that. The man did try to say, well, you know, is this when his body was going down? That may be an option too. But, you know, from the way the lady was being so evasive about it, well, I can't comment on that. You'll have to ask them about the body footage, this, that, and the other. You know, I'm inclined to believe that our brother was shot by two different cops. And if you look at, you know, several angles of the videos, you see actually, you know, cops at other angles. And as they mentioned, there were more than those two cops there. And so, you know, the autopsy definitely proved that his death was a homicide. And basically the only thing a homicide means is his life was taken by somebody else. That's what homicide means. So, and we know that. So we didn't have to see that. But I think that, you know, them subpoenaing her was a way to kind of muzzle her and, you know, make sure that she, you know, stays on code, so to speak, and make sure that she doesn't implicate any of the officers. And they're worried about whether her information will taint the grand jury. The grand jury is already tainted as far as police officer goes. So we're fighting an uphill battle to get this officer arrested. And once again, somebody has already tentatively identified him as Cian McGrath, allegedly, by the tattoos and by his history. So, you know, we're going to definitely keep a close eye on this. But y'all tell me what y'all think about that autopsy conference and the autopsy report. How in the world is he getting shot from this side and getting shot from this side simultaneously, unless there's two separate officers shooting? Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. 919-587-7782. Peace and blessings.